All right, joining us now, former federal prosecutor and contributing writer for New York Magazine, Ankush Khardori. His latest piece is entitled "The Chaos Inside Trump's Legal Team." Also joining the table, MSNBC host Symone Sanders Townsend. Good to have you, Symone, with us. Ankush, I want to ask you a little bit about your piece. Can you describe what Trump's legal team, what it looks like in there when they're talking to the president? Because I'm just wondering, to the former president, does anyone actually tell him the truth?
So that is a major problem with the effort to represent the president. It's very hard to get a straight message delivered to him and accurate information delivered to him. That's something Timothy Parlatore complained about. Plenty of people are complaining about Boris Epshteyn sort of meddling with this process of getting information to and from Trump. And I think it's fair to say, based on what I've heard in recent days, that the effort to defend Trump is very haphazard. There are a bunch of different teams spread out across D.C., Florida, Georgia, New York. Within each team, there's coordination. People are doing their best. But across the teams, they know little to nothing about what's happening in other cases. Some of these lawyers haven't even met each other or spoken to each other. They don't keep each other up to date on what's happening across these other investigations, even though that is a vital thing to do in a situation like this. And candidly, you know, I think you guys have noticed this plenty of times before, but Trump is frankly short on the best legal talent in this effort. And I don't want to disparage the folks working for him. It's a very diverse group of people with diverse group of backgrounds. But this is not a team, quite honestly, I would have ever expected to see representing Trump in the first ever set of criminal indictments against a former president.
Ari.
Hey, Ari Melber here. Yeah, I read your piece. You make a lot of good points. Talk about lawyers and dream teams. Donald Trump has a legal nightmare ahead of him and not exactly what many experts would call a dream team. I'm curious from your reporting what you think about both the way they've really fallen out in public. I mean, we had Tim Parlatore on MSNBC recently. I spoke to Joe Tacopina as well. And there's far above average public sniping, which never seems to bode well. And then second, now that we have reporting that some of the counts against Donald Trump in this new federal indictment include obstruction and false statement charges, how vital is it to Trump's defense to potentially weed out or segment lawyers who, at least according to the Justice Department, Jack Smith, are now in on potential crimes?
Yeah, so to take them in reverse order, it will be absolutely vital to cordon off anyone who may themselves have criminal exposure or any involvement in even advising Trump on acts that may have been included in the indictment. With respect to your first point, somewhat ironically, Parlatore's comments were very, very unusual, obviously, for any lawyer representing any client to go public with concerns like that and internal deliberations like that. One of the interesting things that came out of my discussions, though, was that some people were sort of eager to talk because they felt that Parlatore had not sort of accurately represented the full scope of the problems, which is not just that Epshteyn is in this intermediary role with at least some of the lawyers, and others say they have no problem getting through to Trump if they need to. But there's a much deeper problem concerning a lack of coordination and a lack of consistent messaging that can't be laid at the feet of anyone but Donald Trump himself, the client. The fact that he can't get better lawyers than the current stable he has in some respects, that's not a problem with Epshteyn or the facts. It's a problem with Trump. People don't want to represent him at the most prominent law firms. They don't want to get their hands dirty. The reputational harm to the firm and the lawyers would be significant. And so he's left with a fairly mixed bag, some fairly capable lawyers and some lawyers like Jim Trusty, who I know from my own time as a federal prosecutor, hearing pitches like the one he made on Monday, who are candidly not the sort of people who are going to talk the Justice Department out of anything.
So, Kush, part of the problem also is Donald Trump known for not paying his attorneys, although that apparently is not the case this time around. We've heard from some. But talk to us about the difficulty of managing a client like this, someone who just so blatantly disregards advice. We know he takes to Truth Social every chance he can and says things he probably shouldn't. We've been playing clips all morning of how he's potentially gotten himself in legal trouble for what he has said in CNN town halls or in interviews with Sean Hannity, and now he has complained per reports that he feels like he's not getting great legal advice, that they're underselling the legal peril he's in. So talk to us about just how tough the situation is to manage a client like Donald J. Trump.
I truly cannot imagine what it is like to manage this man. In all honesty, I was in the private sector for a while. I was a prosecutor for a while. And this man is totally undisciplined. He doesn't shut up. And it's a problem for his lawyers. Now, To crystallize a point, though, that maybe is worth expounding here, Trump, I believe, thinks that maintaining this adversarial posture is essential to getting reelected. So there is this paradox here, which is, fighting back, being undisciplined, the truths and all that may conceivably help his reelection prospects. And if he becomes president, all of this is going to be swept away one way or another, whether it's a pardon, whether it's a dismissal of the case or whatever. But in the near term, this sort of behavior is not at all what someone in his position should be engaging in. So we find ourselves in this very strange position where, he's conducting himself in a way that's very bad in the near term for his legal situation. It may be, however, the thing that pulls him back into office. And so there's this crazy push and pull that is unlike anything I've seen, I think anything we've seen in American political history, and certainly anything I've ever seen in any kind of legal case.
All right. Simona, I'm curious because there's been a lot of Biden talk among Trump apologists and leaders in the Republican Party saying, kind of blaming this on him, Biden weaponizing the Justice Department. What's your suggestion for Democrats and for the administration on this? Just stay quiet and let it play out?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's definitely what Joe Biden is going to do. He went through great lengths, I think everyone at this table knows, particularly in the transition, to note what kind of, to really draw a line that he would be a different president than what America saw previously, Donald Trump, as it relates to the Justice Department. So much so that at the White House, there's about 3 people that are allowed to speak to the Justice Department, and that's not hyperbole, one of which being the White House counsel, I think the other of which being the White House counsel's deputy. And the third on any given day can mix around a little bit. But you just can't pick up the phone and call the Justice Department if you work at the White House, because there is a concern about these optics. I mean, Jonathan Lemire, you know better than I, right? That there is a real concern from, I think, the president's team that anything would only just play into the hands of their opponents. And the fact is, the White House wasn't involved in this. Merrick Garland wasn't involved. This was Jack Smith.